putting the K in magic. I'm Joanna DeVoe, and you're watching another episode of Every Which Way. This time featuring Noelle Meade Izzy, also known as the Pollinator Queen. And I know you, if you are a regular viewer of Every Which Way, are going to fall madly in love with this woman because she is all about protecting some of our favorite creatures, the bees, the butterflies, the hummingbirds, and the bats, the pollinators of the natural kingdom. And she's also a fantastic photographer. She has a book about a hummingbird who she says saved her life, and I just know you're gonna love this. So sit back and enjoy. Here is the Pollinator Queen. Hi, Noelle. Welcome to Every Which Way.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's so fun I just found your material because you shot me an email, and it was very interesting the day that you emailed me introducing me to your work. I was on a walk with my son the day before that, and we were talking about our favorite animals and our favorite birds. And I said, I have two favorite birds, crows and hummingbirds. And then I was thinking about it that night. I have in my Amazon wish list 3 books on crows and how amazing they are. And I intend to read them because I'm extremely interested in them. We have those and hummingbirds around our property a lot. And I was like, but I don't know. Is there a book about hummingbirds? And the next day I had an email from you saying how you are the pollinator queen and you wrote this book about hummingbirds. And I was like, thank you, universe. That was fast.
It seems that there's so many synchronicities and almost instant manifestations in this time. And it's a good thing. And it could be something that we have to be very careful because where our heart and our intentions lie in those thoughts and those manifestations, we're seeing it. And so we have to be in a really good space because we're also manifesting things that aren't going to be beneficial to the human race or the animal kingdom and the nature at large. So yeah, that seems to be happening a lot to me too. And it's almost like, wow, thank you. Okay. So let's be real careful what we're putting out there.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you study the law of attraction and things like that. And then as you get into it, you start noticing those synchronicities more and more. And they do start happening at an accelerated rate. I know a lot of people believe there was a shift that accelerated it for all of us. So don't think about pink elephants because you never know what might show up in your living room.
I would just invite it in.
Whatever. Take a seat, my friend.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about why you call yourself the Pollinator Queen?
Well, since the book was written, I started to really study how benevolent the pollinator is. And at first it was the hummingbird. And the book isn't so much about hummingbirds per se, but rather a very personal healing journey that this bird took me on by getting outside of my own self-inflicted woes. And the genesis of the book is from the market crash of 2008. So, while the country and the world at large was sort of just crashing all around all of us, I was in a position where I had this self-fulfilling prophecy because it was happening around me, and I had just started my own business. I had just bought my own home. I was newly single, so all of this was new, and then this happened, and I became panic-stricken, and literally panic-stricken with panic attacks, anxiety attacks. So she was sort of an answer to my prayers, and once the drama was over and the experience, she came, went, she nested, she had her baby, they both fledged. It was like this, oh my gosh, thank you so much for this healing journey, because my panic attacks went away and I didn't take any, drugs for it. I journaled, I paid attention to the world around me. I stopped being so self-absorbed, I guess you would call it, with what if, and allowed myself to experience everything around me. And it was so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I looked at this little pollinator.
Artemis.
And Artemis, yes. And every time she'd come back to the nest to feed her baby, her beak would just be just caked in this bright yellow pollen. And I just started to just think, wow, that's so amazing. I mean, her food source comes from the most beautiful things on the earth, and that's flowers. You know, that natural, colorful, sweet, succulent nectar, you know. What is that? What does that mean? It means that the hummingbird seeks out beauty and grace and goodness and sweetness of life, and we should do the same. And by the way, every time she goes into the stigma of a flower, she redistributes the pollen from the last 1,000 flowers she's visited, and she contributes to the proliferation of growth. And so that's where I thought, that's what we should be doing. A balance of giving and receiving, and the pollinators, all of them, the bees, the bats, the butterflies, and the birds, all give and receive in perfect balance. And so that's kind of where I started really looking into the pollinators. And then when we saw, you know, what's going on with colony collapse disorder and the bees and these benevolent little creatures that work tirelessly for the greater good, as well as the butterflies, as well as the birds and the bats, which people don't realize that's the night shift. At night, after all the little bees, birds, and butterflies go to bed, the bats come out and they take the night shift, you know, the graveyard shift. And these are so important, these creatures on our planet, and we are literally destroying them.
Yes.
We are human beings. And again, back to that, be careful what we're putting out there.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's heartbreaking to think about losing these amazing creatures, but also, I mean, from a selfish standpoint, they are responsible for our food supply. And if we don't have pollinators, we don't have food, or we might just be ushered into a real era of like Soylent Green. I know the government is talking about drone pollinators. Like, we're going to have little robots running around, you know, pollinating, you know, GMO seeds and, you know, things that have pesticides and all kinds of crazy chemicals. We're going to get into frankenfood for real if we start, you know, killing off these amazing creatures, which we've already done if we continue to do it.
Right. And if you think about it, what's the reason? Greed. Mm-hmm. The bottom line, profit. I mean, I've even done research that certain companies, and I don't know if I want to mention the name, but, you know, I
think we know the biggies. I think my audience is pretty hip to who the big bad guys are.
Yeah, and so you're talking about drone insects. They're talking about manufacturing the queen bee. Well, the absolute magnificent beauty of the honeybee hive and how it's created is the queen bee isn't born. Like, there isn't like a queen bee. And by the way, the queen bee is 50% larger than the honeybees. And all the little worker bees are all female, which is so, I mean, I'm not dogging men because believe me, I love the whole male, female energy of everything on this planet. But the women, the nurturers, the natural nurturers, it doesn't surprise me that all of the worker bees, every little bee you see bebopping around the flowers, they're all female. And it's like so heartwarming. But the queen bee is literally manufactured by the worker bees. The worker bees feed a bee that they've chosen in their own way that they want to nurture to become the queen, and they feed it the royal jelly. Mm-hmm. And that bee actually turns into and grows larger than and lives longer than all of the bees that created her. I mean, it's such magic. And to think that a company would go and manufacture a queen bee and dishonor the work that the thousands in that hive do to create her and to make what we have, it's disheartening and then angering and maddening at the same time.
It's a bit of an abomination, playing God. And also, I don't think that we can perfectly replicate nature, even with our most advanced technologies. So it's going to create something perverted in a way. I don't think that we can just exactly recreate nature. It's just not possible. That's the beauty of nature. That's the magic of nature, is it has a little bit of mystery in it that we can't control.
Right. That we're not supposed to know, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be a part of the grand design. That's why we're called human nature, because we are part of the animal kingdom. And we're not, they don't, that's the thing about nature, is it means us no harm. We are the only species on the planet that imposes our egoic will on the greater world around us. And it's like, where did we get this idea? I mean, obviously, for millennia, we've been thinking we conquer things. That's how it works. But, I'm here, and I know there's a lot of other companies and a lot of other efforts, and I just say, great, let's have a coalition of the willing. And that's how I look at it. And it's the big companies that are trying to help, the little people, little companies like mine that are trying to help, and then the individual consumer that when you decide to start planting your spring and summer gardens this year, think about what you're buying. And that is part of what I want to help inform, is how you can do that, because there are ways to at least alleviate some of what could just, that automatic purchase, that let's just go to, Home Depot or whatever, the big box stores. I love Home Depot for many things, and I love all those Lowe's and whatever. But those big box stores, they don't sell organic. And if you go to a nursery, you're a one-on-one with the people that own the nursery, that run it, that cultivate that type of stuff, flowers, plants, trees, soil. Talk to them about their organic products. Don't buy products made by Bayer and Dow. Those are the big box, the Roundup, the stuff that goes into, it's that stuff where it's like, I know I have to get rid of these pests in my garden, so I'm going to buy this plastic box of Roundup, and I'm going to put it in my soil, and then everything that grows from that soil, every pollinator that's going in for pollen and nectar, you're destroying them. So we can make those individual purchases, those smarter purchases, if we go to the right places and ask the right questions.
Well, how can someone, if they want to plant a garden this year in their yard, how can they plant one that is friendly to these pollinators and attracts them and gives them a nice place to hang out? What can they do besides buying organic heirloom seeds? What else can they do? Is there a kind of flower they like, or trees or bushes?
Oh boy, yeah. Well, first and foremost, hummingbirds. If the flowers aren't available for the hummingbirds, we can always give them in our garden the sugar water that we make from home. Let's just make sure our sugar, wherever that comes from, isn't, laden with however it was created through, with pesticides. But definitely have a hummingbird feeder. Let's start with the hummers. And then any of the flowers that have the long tubular flower part of it, the hummingbirds like to go up into there, and they have a lot of nectar in there. So those are great for hummingbirds. For bees, and bees love the color yellow and orange and purple. Hummingbirds love red. And so if you go and buy a hummingbird feeder, you don't have to get any of those really elaborate feeders that have an overabundance of color. Just go get the plain glass with just the red little plastic flowers around them, and they're good. And don't put the red dye in the sugar water. Just have it be plain. They'll be attracted to the red. But the dye happens to sour over time, quicker than usual in the summertime, because it heats up and then it gets fungus, and it can actually kill a hummingbird. So we have to be really careful with that. And then butterflies. Butterflies like all the same thing that bees and hummingbirds like. So really colorful flowers. Bees, okay, so if you think about a rose and how the petals fold in and there's layers and layers of petals, okay, there's that flower. And then there's the flower, for example, the stargazer. And the stargazer, if you notice, they have those wispy things that have the pollen that hangs. Okay, bees like those flowers. That's the kind of flowers that bees like because the pollen is really abundant and the little bees fill their little pollen pockets that are on the side of their hips. If you ever get up close to a bee that has those pollen pockets, it's adorable. Yeah. So bees like those kind of flowers, and then hummingbirds like the ones with the long tubular and they can get up in the stigma. But overall, bees and hummingbirds and butterflies really like all of the same flowers. A lot of bright colors, so reds, blues, yellows, and purples are really good for the garden. Yeah.
I have an orange tree in the backyard that's blossoming right now, and they're just those little white flowers, but they smell so amazing. And that is, the bees love it every year. Yeah.
That's that and jasmine. You know, jasmine's a great little ground cover and smells wonderful, and the bees and butterflies like that as well. But yeah, those orange blossoms and lemon blossoms and lime blossoms, those white flowers, the memories of that when I was a kid, like in summertime, just walking down the street to the grocery store, it's like, oh, yum. Yeah, so those blossoms are great.
I always pause for that. Let's mention the name of your company, too, because it's so cute. It's Benevolent.
Yeah, so but the word benevolent is marked by intentions and actions of love. And so it's just the perfect word. It's a perfect word for Earth, for to describe Mother Earth and Gaia, you know, as a benevolent being that sustains all of us here. And bees are benevolent. You know, they work tirelessly. They're so integrated outside doing their thing and back at the hive. They are such a wonderful example for human beings. And so benevolent was just so perfect, and then to have it be a double B because I'm focusing on the bees and the pollinators. So
yes, it's sweet. Yeah. And you also, I love something that you talk about, and that is how we can be spiritual pollinators in our own lives. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we can be more benevolent. I mean, really, spiritual, you know, like we were talking earlier, we're getting to a place, we just moved into the Aquarian age. I don't know if you knew that. We were in the Piscean age for like 25,000 years. And the Piscean age was sort of the energy of having control over, conquering of. And the Aquarian age is now the internal thing where people are, what the energy is to go within and then give out. And it's funny because it seems that things feel like they're getting worse. You know, I remember talking to my husband and I said, you know, this Aquarian age is supposed to have that new energy. You know, we talked about the Mayan calendar 2012, right? Did you guys ever talk about that, you and your friends?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was supposed to be, you know, this, people thought it was going to be the end of the world, but it was just really an energetic shift from my understanding, a more spiritual shift, hopefully. And it seems like things sometimes are just, are worse. I mean, the wars and the man-on-man atrocities, the man-on-nature atrocities, it's just ugly. And he said, you know, sometimes it's like that piece of metal that's tarnished, and you just got to keep rubbing and rubbing, and eventually you're going to see the beauty of the metal and the shine coming through. But we're still in that rubbing, you know, kind of clearing out the old. So it seems that way, like, ugh. But to be a spiritual pollinator, you know, it's as simple as smiling at someone when you pass them by. There's so many people that the frown is just what they do all day long. And it's interesting because I've done this where I've purposely, someone walks by and I could tell that we are geared and set up just to pass each other by because that's the standard. And I said to myself, I'm going to look at this person and I'm going to smile and say hello and see what they do. And I have literally had people completely shocked. You can feel it and see it in their body language, like, oh, hi, and it's like, hi, have a nice day. And a smile is works miracles. The power of a hello works miracles.
And it costs nothing.
Nothing. And that's the thing about nature is, spiritually pollinating is giving back to nature. Okay, so we can give back by not killing them. Let's just start there. I mean, that's the obvious. But to go out and look around you and see the flowers, the bees, whatever, the crows and ravens, love them. I do blogs on those birds. They are just absolutely magnificent. We're watching 2 ravens build their nest right now, and on the side of a cliff. And it is fascinating. And to turn to them and in your heart say, thank you for being willing to participate on earth with me in this time and space. Because everything has a choice to come and incarnate, I believe. And when everything around us that's so beautiful says, all right, I think I'll go and I'll incarnate onto the earth plane and I will enrich the lives of humans just by my presence. I won't bother them. I won't hurt them. But when they see me, they can feel gratitude. And what a feeling. That's spiritual pollination. Just be appreciative and say thank you to all the things that have agreed to be here with us as guests. Because that's what we are.
I feel that when I cross those birds. They hang out here. They caw and make all kinds of crazy noise. Or when a hummingbird buzzes by me. Both those birds, I love birds, but in particular those 2, they always give me pause. And it just feels special. I'll always stop for them and just have a little moment. Your book is called, I want to mention the name of it, The Hummingbird That Answered My Heart's Calling, and you have a really nice preview of it on your website. Can you tell us a little bit? I know you already mentioned that it was about healing for you from this market crash and a lot of ideas. Was it a physical healing? Was the bird symbolic for you? How did Artemis the hummingbird help you through this? And the book is a very picture-rich book, lots of gorgeous photographs, but there's written content as well.
Yeah, the photos were just something that was just part of the journey of being out on my balcony, because I didn't, when I was going through all of the really hard physical panic. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had anxiety or panic attacks, but you feel like you're dying.
Yes.
I mean, I thought the first time this happened, I was in Vegas with 17 girls. And I was in a room sleeping with 7 of them at the time. And all of this stuff, I couldn't even go anywhere and enjoy myself because I was so worried when I got back to home. Would I still have my business? Would I still be able to make it on my own? Would I lose everything I have? It was just so all-consuming, the what ifs, Yep. And so I prayed, if you want to call it that, which was basically just going out for walks, looking around like we talk about, noticing, and just whatever would be willing to listen to me at the time. I would just sort of ask for help in my healing. And this nest, I got home one afternoon, went out to my balcony, and this nest, the size of a walnut shell, was hanging over my balcony on this pine tree branch. And I didn't get too close because it wasn't that far away, but there was no bird in it. And so I watched it for about an hour, like, this is interesting. It's a nice day. I'll just sit out here on my glider and see what shows up. And this hummingbird showed up. And it was like, wow, okay, first of all, you have the littlest nest on the planet. And second of all, you fly in here so fast. It's like, oh, and she was building. As I was sitting there, she had all of this, like spider webs all over her beak and down her chest. And she was like pulling it off and, just kind of building the nest as I sat there. And then she just kind of settled into it. And we we made eye contact. And, it might sound foo-foo and people might go, oh, yeah, really? You made eye contact with a hummingbird? But yes, I did. And her eyes were these rich black pearls. And I just looked at her and it was just, I introduced myself and just said, I'm not here to bother you. I just, wow, you're really cool. And so for 3 months, I would just go out and I'd get my journal and I'd journal what I was experiencing, the physical part, like how she would build her nest. And then I would get these inspirations like, wow, there's so much parallel between human beings and this bird. I'm watching as the days and the weeks and the months go by. And by the way, I'm not having a panic attack. And I haven't had anxiety. And I'm sleeping through the night. Could this really be a healing journey for me? And then I would take the photos. And it would just so happen I would get photos just at the right time, where it was almost like she would be calling me, hey, you're going to want to see this one, and I would take the photo. And we had a really great relationship for about 3 months until they took off. And then, oh my God, it was heartbreaking. But the journey, I'll never forget it. And it changed my life because I continued my graphic design businesses. And that's what the business I opened when this all happened. And it went strong for about 10 years. But when I started thinking about writing the book and then really doing something with writing, that's where my life has led me now. And if this is the message to people, our teachers and our inspiration comes through so many channels, and nature is one of them. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so abundant around us. So pay attention to whatever's trying to communicate with you, because if I would have just let that bird just be a backdrop to my life, oh, a nest, oh, hummingbird, how cool, and just went on, I wouldn't have taken pictures. I wouldn't have journaled. I wouldn't have been able to lay all this out and go, this could be something that I could share with other people through a book. And then, by the way, I could start my writing, because now I have a bunch of children's books that are in the works about a honeybee.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah, so it just, if I would have just ignored it, my life wouldn't have been where it is now. And it was a bird that did this. So the gratitude is overwhelming for me.
It's so great. It's such a great story. And you really, I usually end my interviews by asking people their one tip for creating the kick-ass life of their dreams, but I feel like you just kind of answered that for me. So I'm going to ask you something a little bit different.
Okay.
And that is, what is your one kick-ass tip for participating in the preservation of these pollinators? How can we support them and protect them in our just daily choices? Is there something we can do at the grocery store? Is there something we can do beyond not spraying Roundup on our yard, or maybe to educate our kids? What tip would you have in that realm of helping these guys out?
Okay, first thing is, as Crosby, Stills, and Nash said, teach our children well, because the children are going to be the ones in the next generation that are the decision makers, that hold office in wherever they live, if they want to be in government or Congress, that are going to have must have a sense of integrity that comes from people like you that go on walks with their child and expose them to the beauty and to show them. I had a friend tell me that I was at her daughter's birthday party, and my friend works at the studios and as a craft service. So she creates all the craft service for a very, very high, the Ellen Show. I'm just going to say it.
Woo-hoo, we love Ellen.
Yeah. So she's a great cook, and when she has birthday parties for her kids, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. The spread in the backyard of the swimming pool is amazing, but the spread always contains the most wonderful fruits and vegetables and other things. And these kids are out there swimming, and they've got watermelon, and they've got peaches, and they've got strawberries and cherries and all this beautiful spread. And my friend's telling me that, when the bees come around, because their daughter's allergic to bees, and I understand that. I have empathy for that. Certainly you don't want to have a bee-friendly yard when your family's allergic to bee stings, But she does have that pen that if something should happen, she can give herself whatever it is you give. And she was telling me that her daughter had to kill some bees. You know, she was stomping on them while she was swimming around the pool. And I just said, your daughter has to know that that entire spread that her and her friends are enjoying each time they get out of the pool and they're hungry is because of that bee right there. To kill one bee and destroy part of that great good that goes back to the hive and creates what we eat it's futile for one thing. You're destroying the bee, so don't kill it. It's getting some water, it's doing its thing. And by the way, fear, nature naturally takes that as a sign of aggression. You've heard that. Mm-hmm. Dogs can sense fear. They don't sense fear and go, oh, this person's frightened of me. They sense the energetic vibration of fear, and they take it as a form of aggression. I just go out and I say, spiritual pollination, I'm not afraid of the bees. I'm grateful for the bees. Show yourself, bees. It's okay. I won't hurt you. So then we have a harmonious, energetic relationship. That's one of the things that we can do is go out and hold the pollinators in your mind's eye as safe and protected. I get a lot of people that say, Noelle, what can I do? Okay, I won't buy Roundup, like you said, mm-hmm. and I'll go and try to buy organic, and I'll ask the right questions. But these big farm companies or, Monsanto or whatever, the people that we can't control that are controlling Congress or whatever, what can I do? And I tell you this, our energy is powerful. And if people would just realize that what they think and what they feel and what they hold as important, the whole world feels it. You can send the Bee Nation love, support by just closing your eyes, take a moment, close your eyes, and see them safe, see them abundant on the planet. And they will feel that. That's what's going to be the shift in consciousness on this planet. I believe that. So that's what we can do. If you feel powerless, do the prayer thing or the holding in your mind's eye of safety for all of these creatures and whatever creature you have an affinity for. The dolphins in Taiji, the whales, the factory farm animals, whatever feels close to your heart, they'll feel your vibration and your love, and that will start gearing up the planet for an energetic shift that will then, the physical will follow. I feel that very strongly.
I love that. I'm so happy that you reached out. This has been fabulous. I know, too, my audience is just going to adore you. You are so what they're into. And I haven't seen somebody actually do specifically what you do. So it's very special. Can you tell us where to find you on the internet? Like the name of your website?
Well, I have a Facebook page. So okay. Noelle Mead Izzy. Mm-hmm. My website, benevolent.com. So that's BEE-Nevolent.com, and that'll link you up to my Google Plus, because I'm also a wildlife photographer, so I do blogs. If you go on my website, I do blogs that where I'll photograph any creature that comes to me, and it's usually just something that shows up. When you start aligning yourself with nature, nature says, can I have my picture taken too? Can you tell my story too? Mm-hmm. So I do a blog where, because of animal totems and the symbolic nature of all of the creatures out there, they all relate to us. So I'll take a photo and then it's kind of like, what is the symbolic nature of the raven and the crow, and how does it relate to human beings, and what can we learn from them? So that's part of what I do also. So the blog, you can, read the blog and go on Google Plus and see some of the photography and that.
Wow. So cool. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I love you too. You're wonderful.
Much love. Peace.
Much love. Peace.